For many of us, basketball is life. It provides athletic and character building opportunities and bridges societal and cultural gaps locally, nationally, and internationally. That's the mission of the Basketball Embassy, and this is United We Hoop.
Well, I want to welcome everybody. This is the United We Hoop podcast. I'm Chris Dial, and I'm here with Chinny Nwagbo. And Chinny, I'm so happy to have you with us today. First, I just want to say thanks again for taking the time to have a good chat today on this Basketball Embassy podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. I'm excited to see where this conversation goes. And I was really excited to just learn about your passion as well. So I couldn't pass this up.
Yeah, no, great. I'll tell the audience here that I had the privileged opportunity to get connected with you, and it actually happened 20 different ways. So tell these folks a little bit about you. Obviously as a player, extremely decorated, played at Syracuse with another good friend of mine, Rochelle Coleman. I'll give Ro a little shout out here.
Yeah.
And then, she's done some incredible work with Peace Players and others. She's helped make the Basketball Embassy look good in different times. So, but then after that, you were a journeywoman, played all over the world at some of the highest levels, even representing Nigeria with their national team. So I know you'll have, plenty to share from that context and from that perspective. But I think what really, we discussed the synergies that exist are in your heart and your passion for what this game can do for others, and what it's done for you intangibly and tangibly both. And then just some of the work that you've done since kind of transitioning from, primarily just, I know you can still play, you take my lunch money right now, but I mean, kind of making that professional transition to where, okay, now how can I platform myself in this game to really affect positively, communities all over the place. So you've done some work with the NBA, you've done some work in with different NBA teams, and you've also done some work feet on the ground, in some really interesting places in the world. So I do want to get into all that, but I want to, I'd like to start just with, we're both sitting here in the good old US of A, and, both as basketball people and both as people that, have been around the world and seen life from a lot of different vantage points and perspectives. But what is going on right now? I mean, let's talk a little bit about the United States and some of these divisions that have just continued to surface. And now we're looking at these and people like you and I just head spinning, trying to figure out what's going on.
Right. We're talking about the current climate of our nation and with regards to Black Lives Matter. And I think one of the most important things, it's really imperative to make the statement that it's not divides that haven't already been there. I think there was a full blanket over them and everybody kind of was just going about their business. While there were groups of people, we're saying African Americans or people of color who were suffering. And so just with there's just been a lot of racial injustice and things that are seen more because I think of the social platforms that we have where people can record videos of people who are being arrested and end up dying at the hands of our justice system. So I think that is a tough place to be in. But with what we're doing and why basketball is so important is that even in this current climate, you could still use sports to unite and lift up, in our case, athletes, young athletes. And so the one thing that I really love about basketball, and I'll speak specifically to my sport, is that in that world, there's a place for international relations. There's a place to talk about racial discrimination. There's a place for genderism, pay disparity, and all those conversations come up. But the environment is never hostile because we're athletes and we're all speaking from that same place, that same passion, that same love. And so I've always known sports to be a tool to create social change, right? Sports has been a tool to help people bridge the gaps. And so that's one thing I love about the transition from being an athlete to now working in the business of sports. I think sometimes as an athlete, you're not paying attention to a lot of things. You're a pro athlete, you're out there, you're enjoying the world. I didn't really see too much of racial discrimination when I was there. But that's because I love people and cultures of the world, and I kind of paid attention to like the beauty of things. And I tend to shy away from things that don't serve me. But that was a great question. So I'm happy that, yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that. It's such a cool perspective, and maybe I haven't thought much about that, but there's almost like, for people that are I'm going to clump myself in with you, which is probably undeserving, but in terms of awareness, like I consider myself a pretty aware, person. I try to be an empathic person. I try to be sensitive. I've gone and worked, obviously the organization puts itself first. So we'll go into a conservative Muslim country. We'll go into a more progressive Orthodox Christian country.
Right.
We'll go into a secular space. Color wasn't even secondary, tertiary, or even further down the line. It was just, these people don't look like me. And I didn't think about any of that the whole time. But maybe there's almost like a colorful ignorance in there when you're an athlete, when you're somebody that just doesn't seek out, I guess, like, I just don't look for divide, you know what I mean? And I think a lot of people, I think sometimes to see this the right way, you almost have to have like a keen eye for division. You've got to go look to categorize humanity that way. And you mentioned, like, as a basketball player and playing with as many different people as you have and in different places, I don't know that, no one would ever say to me, Chinny's got an eye for division. You've got an eye for unification,
Right.
And so sometimes it can even make us, in the midst of these spaces, maybe a little bit, unconscious of some of those divisions.
I think it depends on who you are, and obviously your race as well. But I think that there is a foundation, like there's a line that you are speaking to that is true. I mean, for example, I'll give you an example. When I was in Spain, my first year, couldn't speak the language, didn't know anything, and I would go to the grocery store, and hopefully it was the grocery store because I was just kind of like guessing. And I would walk past these old ladies, even in Poland, cute little old ladies get into the grocery store with their little canes, and they would always stare, and their faces were so serious when they were staring. And I thought, oh, okay, maybe it's a racial thing. But then eventually I was like, okay, well, let me just wave and say hi back. And they were like, they're, so happy. Probably for them, it's the first time to see an African-American woman in their lives.
Right.
It wasn't received. If you have an open mind and you're able to really be aware and make the adjustments, I think in that case, that's a different case than what we're talking about that's going on in the United States. But yeah, those types of things, there is a racial ignorance sometimes. But there's other cases where
oh, it's, yeah.
And you're probably going to have different views. Again, because, I'm African-American, you're white. Right. I mean, it's just so different. But yeah, no, there's been a lot of cases where I haven't felt that at all. And there have been a few cases where I have.
Right.
But, so yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask you something else. Talk about, like I said, just humanity's tendency, unfortunately, to just clump people into these buckets. It's like, you're male, you're female, you're black, you're white, you're rich, you're poor. We're so good at categorization and, division. It's it's divisive language.
Right.
So you've coached boys and girls, you've worked with professionals, you've been around, you've been a great development coach for the league. We'll get into some of the sports diplomacy stuff you've worked. We've got mutual friends in the State Department and some of their primary partners. So right now, amidst all the other things going on, I'm coaching a men's basketball team in college.
Congratulations about that.
And so I'm down here, in San Antonio, Our Lady of Lake University. And I have a great group of guys, and I hopefully you'll get to meet these guys. Maybe come impart some knowledge, and then maybe even show them a couple of things that'll help them be, better fundamental players. But we've been having a lot of open dialogue, a lot of conversations. Our guys are, they're conscious. They want, they keep up with all pertinent political issues, especially Black Lives Matter. I don't know what the breakdown of our team is ethnically, but we've got a pretty broad spectrum because, me, I'm recruiting internationals too. So we got 3 or 4 guys from across the pond, plus a bunch of our local guys that range from, white, Hispanic, like truly Central American, Latino descent, African American, all the way through.
Right.
So we've had a really interesting dialogue, but what would you say to these young men that are like right now, they want to be a part of an effective change. Right. They want to contribute to sort of a solution oriented movement forward. And I think a lot of young men and young women are a little bit lost as to like, what do I do? Like, what's the most effective thing that I can do? And so if I know I kind of put you on the spot here, it won't be the first time, but what would you tell these guys? Yeah.
Okay. So first I'd say I don't have all the answers. But I know that with anything that involves change, that change has to start with you. So my first and probably strongest point would be figure out how you can change your perspective, figure out how you can change yourself, and don't just stand in unity with African Americans. Be willing to dismantle that privilege that you may have based on the color of your skin, and move forward in that direction. So there's a lot of things, and when you talk about self, there's so much improvement that you can do with yourself. And one could be just listening. One could be reaching out to your African American friends, making sure they're okay, right. And just understanding that your perspective is not the sole perspective, and that there are a lot of things that you may be privy to. There are a lot of things that you may be subjected to, and just because you don't see the racism doesn't mean it's not prevalent and it doesn't exist. Right. So I just would say self-evaluation. It's like a player, right? Right. As basketball players, if you want to be better, you don't look to your team and say, "Hey, you need to do this." You look to yourself. You think about what you're good at, how you can improve that, the areas of where you need to work, and you work on those things. If you're really truly passionate about being this great player, it's the same exact concept. You want racism to be eradicated. You want racism to get the heck out of here. Then you've got to look at yourself and think about what you can do as a person individually to help add value to that idea of racism.
Right. No, that's beautiful. I'm going to be stealing a bunch of that and giving it to these guys in small, manageable chunks. They're still college guys, so we can't give them too much credit. We got to slow it down, break it down for them. But no, you made such a bunch of good points and eloquently as well. But you're preaching to the concept of accountability. Like self-accountability. And that's what, basketball does that to you. It's like you said, I can't show up every day. And I mean, it's different in a single athlete sport. If I go out on the golf course and I'm trying to compete, I can get into the weather a little bit, but it's me,
Right. Exactly.
But when I get into basketball, it's me, but it's me in this, in this family, this group of people that are trying to, embrace a common goal and get there. And so there's just this unwritten sort of accountability with our sport that we love, that's there. And so I think it's an incredible thing. One thing I did tell our young men, because, a coach's job too is to get under their skin a little bit, try to push.
Bring the best out of them. Yeah.
So I told him, I said, look, man, you guys are great guys. You wouldn't be here if we didn't like you. I always tell players, like, coaches, they need to like you. Like, you guys don't think that's a thing, but we spend so much time together. I'm not going to have a bunch of dudes that I don't want to be around.
Right.
We're going to spend the majority of the year together.
Right.
So, but I told him, I said, to me, and again, just opinion, a lot of what Black Lives Matter represents, a lot of what it is trying to contest, battle, mitigate is just founded in fear. Founded in hate.
Right.
And, the fear of what's different, the fear of what's to come, the fear of like my own ego. There's a lot of bruised egos in America right now. Everybody's like, oh, and it's almost hard to stomach. Yeah. But I told my guys, I was like, look, if we're talking about hate at the base of this divisiveness, if you choose to embrace love, which is what I think we have to do, we got to love each other. Not to get too hallmarky, but I mean, it's the old golden rule. I'm going to treat you how I want to be treated. You know, I want to be loved. I'm going to love you. But I think one thing, you know, that stood out to me is if these guys are going to embrace love, my players right now, they better do it all the way across the board. I told them, I don't want to see you out there protesting and being all eloquent in your speech and articulating yourself so well when it comes to black and white. And then the next day I see you, you know, speaking a certain way to a woman, you know, speaking a certain way to somebody else. That's not like you. So if you're going to be love and not hate, we got to treat ourselves better. We got to treat our moms better. We got to treat our sisters better. We got to treat our girlfriends better. We got to do all those things. And so that culture, these guys were a couple of generations apart. They're well intended, but they can also get kind of those blinders on, and they're like, yeah, I'm gonna combat this inequity here, this, you know, inequality here, but I'm not gonna live it out all the way through. And it goes back to, I think, to what you said, which is it takes us to look back on ourselves, you know, and really make changes, you know.
And taking a step further too. I mean, you mentioned love, which is amazing. But not just love. Love is the foundation for everything, but it's also, because you can love someone and hurt them, right? You can love them and not do right by them. You can treat somebody as you treat yourself, right? But if you don't treat yourself well, then that's poor treatment anyway.
You're exactly right.
But the love is understanding that this is what it is. The love is first accepting the person, right? And then the next step, because we're not talking about love only, we're talking about the next step past love, because once we get the love, it's awesome. We can't become complacent about the love. It's now, how are we exercising that love in our daily lives? Like, I can say I love you, but if I'm not treating you with actual love, if I'm not willing to make some sacrifices, which is, you know, putting our privilege aside to actually make sure that that love is existent and it continues to grow, then that's not really love. And so I think the conversation is amazing, and taking that conversation step forward and understanding that love is always changing, always evolving, right? It's not just enough to say, hey, I love my teammate. If you really love your teammate, how are you showing them love? Because last summer when you went home, did you get better? You didn't get better, right? Your love has to speak into the world. There has to be action behind that love, and it has to be consistent action, and it has to raise the level every single time. So I love the concept of love, because that's where I operate from. But I also love the concept of love plus accountability. That's the next step. So, yeah.
No, you're right on. Yeah, and Chinny, it took me about, 3.5 seconds when I talked to you first on the phone to realize that this is a person that's coming from a place of love. Yeah, you're so awesome. Well, I want to transition a little bit because we brought up, we're talking about issues surrounding equality, issues surrounding equity. And you and I were also just visiting briefly about how we just celebrated a really important anniversary of the passing of Title IX. Right. And talking about trying to, create a framework where equity could exist, especially in spaces of youth sport. And so, like everything else in our awesome, and I do mean it sincerely, I love being an American. I love being from here. Sometimes if you didn't know me well enough, you'd hear me talking and be like, is this guy Canadian, or is he from, where's this dude from, Sweden? But I do love this place, but we have a certain deliberate stubbornness sometimes when it comes. So even when Title IX was passed, it took, a decade and a half probably before we started to see, some of those results and some of those intended consequences. But now we're in an incredible place. So, for our audience today, and whoever, decides to come in and share with us in this conversation, let's talk a little bit about Title IX. You can speak empathetically to this. You can talk about, some of the opportunities it's created for you and other young women and everybody that you work with. And there's a really distinct importance to this for young men as well. That was a part of the movement. So happy anniversary, Title IX.
Right. June 23rd, 1972 is a big day. As you said, there have been some major improvements. I mean, major. And without that, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have played at Syracuse. I wouldn't have played professionally for 11 years, and I would be using my platform now to serve something greater than myself through the sport. So, definitely a great time to be alive. And there are still more adjustments that need to be made because with Title IX, sometimes, when you make these types of rules where people have to follow them, they're just like, what? Why? But it ends up being something so fantastic in the very end. And not that we're at the end, but one of the things that I love most about it is that women prevailed with Title IX being in place or without it being in place. And so you're starting to see a big shift in women in sports, women coaching men's sports as well. So you saw like 3 years ago, we've had 2 general managers in the NBA. We've had referees in the NFL. So the shift is there, slow. It's a marathon, but it is there. And I embrace it and I'm thankful for it. And to speak to the part of being an African-American woman, have been some great shifts there as well. However, I think with just, we're talking about head coaches and those types of positions on the collegiate level, the numbers are still quite low. And so I'm hoping in the next 10 years, we start to see the shift of equality in terms of the Title IX implications. And also, too, there's not a lot of women who are head coaches on the collegiate level. So the shifts are coming. It's just about having the right systems in place to ensure that women can succeed at these roles, just like we have for the men. So I'm thankful for
yeah.
No,
well put, as usual. I completely agree, and I think there's still some subsequent calls to action, right? Founded in this movement, and we've got to continue to create perpetual momentum, in this space. And I think it's really interesting that not only are you seeing these women in these leadership positions, but you're also seeing, situations where you've got more women now coaching young men. It's like that used to never be a thing. Maybe a mom or an aunt that was taking that U10 team, somewhere and doing that. But now we've got a situation where you've got women that are actually developing players. And, there's a couple of, examples that I've got that I don't want to, over name drop, but I've got a good friend, Dee Davis, and she worked with USA Basketball. Dee played at Vanderbilt back in the day, played in the league for a minute, but she's one of the best coaches I've ever met, just coaches. And so anytime I had a chance to do a camp or work with Dee, you'd always have those guys that are, you got 16, 17-year-old dudes. They're figuring it all out.
Right.
They get into a station, they see a female. They're like, all right. Well, we'll do. And it would take them about, 10 seconds to see like, oh, okay, this is different. She's also better than me. And so, yeah. So, and it's been fun for me as well. Overseas, you don't see it, you don't see women, being empowered, through coaching. And so I've always liked going into places and then placing a female coach, like in a camp setting for like a national team or youth national team, and putting her in charge of like the most talented group of boys, and everybody just going, oh, coach, we don't do that. Yeah, I know you don't do that. That's why your ranking is where it's at. Like, let's try that, and then they just kill it. So it's been, those are the spaces I think United States has to take it upon ourselves to be sort of that change maker. We've got to do a better job, a more deliberate job. And I think organizations like USA Basketball are making great strides. They're doing great things. They're being cognizant of those things. They've got females in leadership positions and contributing positions that are moving the needle. So, but I completely agree with you.
One of the things I really love about what you said, not only that, but I think, and I'm going back to a little bit to Title IX. The great thing about Title IX is it provided that awareness that you talked about before, right? For men, right? Because it's like, oh, I can play. Oh, she can play too. You know what I mean? And so I think that, yes, we need to be the trailblazers and the change makers with regards to women in CEO positions and coaches and things of that nature where we're taking them seriously. for their ability to be able to coach, right? It's not about coaching men or women. It's just to be able to coach and accepting women as they are, which is, again, we're getting there. But the great thing about what you said and this podcast, for example, is it's creating those platforms to get that conversation out there. Like, look at LeBron when they're going to the women's games, and
Right.
that type of support by
Right.
men is huge. It's pivotal, and it shows that there is room for a lot of change. It shows that there is support, and we just need more of it. So, yeah, definitely a great topic to talk about.
It is.
It makes me happy. It makes me happy and sad at the same time that, you have to have those conversations where people are saying, "Wow, she can coach because she can coach men." Well, she could just coach. Period.
She can coach. Yeah.
Yeah, and because she's a she doesn't mean she can't coach. And I think that women's game is, no offense, I mean, I might be biased, but far more fundamentally sound than
no question. There's no question. That's not even a topic for debate in my world. We can't even debate that. Well, I think, we could do the whole show just on this, but there's a couple of other things just before we transition to the next element about this. You mentioned LeBron and those guys,
Right.
Getting so involved. I don't know how much you've seen her play, but Sabrina Ionescu from Romania, played at Oregon so I work in Romania a bunch, but she's got an entire country, 20 million people behind her,
Right.
because she's just killing it, Miss Triple Double. Well, she was one of the handful of super elite people that, that got to speak at Kobe's memorial,
Right.
because Kobe and his daughter Gia, they had taken such a keen and passionate interest in this young lady and what she was doing for the game. And that relationship developed, and, it speaks a lot to who Kobe was and what he stood for, obviously. But it was just such an interesting dynamic. And again, it's kind of, we're in the United We Hoop podcast. It's like, you got this young gal that her parents were Romanian immigrants. You've got this African-American dude that speaks 5-6 languages fluently, spent a lot of time in Italy, was found. Yeah. And then those two find this impeccable friendship, and this relationship develops, and it's out of this game, it's out of this game. And so,
yeah, man, it's just amazing, right? Like,
it is.
Like, it's I'm sorry, when you hear Kobe, those things, man, I'm so thankful that I'm an athlete. I'm so thankful that I was able to play the international game, and I'm so thankful for the relationships that I've made, and I'm so thankful for the subtle nuances that I learned from cultures and the intercultural competencies. So it's just, man, when I tell you my line of friends, and not to make this about me, but Kobe was amazing in that way. He could speak Italian. I could speak Spanish. I have friends from all over the world. I mean, if I want to take a holiday, which we can't do now, I've got friends in Poland. I've got friends in Spain. I've got friends in Italy. I've got friends in Chile. I've got friends in China. And this is because of basketball. It's because, the game can do so much for you.
It's no question.
Sorry, you just got me happy. You got me excited.
No, good. This is what it is. I'm so glad. I mean, I'm just...
His love for his daughter, and...
Right.
Man.
Yeah.
Sports is something else. And he's probably right. So, yeah. That's
what it is, I think. And if for somehow you're out there and you're involved in this game and you're missing that, you're missing it. This is what it is, So last thing, kind of in the Title IX discussion, I want to get your take on this real quick. And our friend Mary has joined us. We were talking about you earlier, Mary. I want to get your take on this. I was really comfortable throwing Dee Davis out because I've known Dee for a long time, and she won't sue me or anything. So this other coach I'm going to talk about really quickly. I'm not going to use her name today because I didn't ask her permission, and we don't know each other like that. Yeah. But I was so impressed. And she's an NCAA Division I head coach. She's an African-American. And I heard her speak at a conference, I think a year and a half ago. Okay. And she said this. and she did it deliberately. And so this is taken out of context a little bit, but just understand that this was a conference that was geared towards equality. That was our discussion. We were talking about equality. We were talking about things like Title IX.
Right.
Okay. She stood up at one point. She was on a panel with some other African-American female coaches. And actually there was a couple of coaches that were not African-American, but female. And she said, you know what? One thing I don't want to get lost in here. And she was like, I'm raising my daughter this way. We actually look at equality a little bit differently. She goes, she said, I don't want to be hired because statistically I'm filling a gap.
Right.
She goes, I want equity.
Right.
She was like, when you put all these coaches out, male, female, black, white, every shape, every color, every experience, I want to get hired because I'm better than they are.
Exactly. That's the bottom line.
Yeah.
That's all it is. That's all we're asking for. Like, I just want to be hired because I'm the best candidate.
Right.
And so we can take it all the way to Black Lives Matter, and that's all it is. I just want to be treated equal, not based on the color of my skin.
Right.
Take Title IX. I just want to be treated equal and have the same opportunities, not based on my gender. That's all it is. You know, and I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, not too much to ask. I don't think, but that's where we're at. And people miss this. Like, it's just airplanes flying over their head, this, that. We get caught up in all these semantics. But at the end of the day, man, we're people. We're just trying to do what we do. If I'm the best cook in the kitchen, then let me cook the meal, and so on and so on and so on. And I think that's what she said that day was very powerful, because she was in a place where she could have just continued to harp on just blatant, blind equality. She didn't want that. She wanted equity. She wanted to know that she was just going to give a fighting chance. You pitch 3 balls to that person, pitch 3 balls to me. Let's see who hits it first. So I thought that was important, and I think it's a great way to raise your kids.
It's an amazing way to raise your kids. And in this current climate, it's a strong way to raise your kids. I mean, you teach them about inequalities, you teach them about privilege, you teach them about racial disparity, you teach them about social injustice, you teach them about those things. But at the end of the story, you teach them about being the best person that they can be, and exercising who they are in the world, so that you're serving something greater than yourself. And I think that's the bottom line here. And if we could all follow that equation, our life would be a little bit easier and better. But yeah, no, that's a dynamic way to raise kids, I think.
I agree. Well, okay, so we'll transition. I want to hit one more kind of piece to this discussion, and and then we can kind of wrap up just talking about whatever you want. The weather.
Yeah, I've got my hands flying. I'm all over.
No, I love it. I love it. Me too. I'm ready to go get some shots up or do some push-ups or something. Yeah. You're an EG, Chinny. We always tell our players that, like, you're either an EG or an ET. You're an energy giver or an energy taker. You can't be. You're one or the other. Okay. You are an EG. You are an energy giver for sure. And we always tell guys, like, we don't recruit ETs. Like, we don't want ETs in our life. We don't marry an ET. Nobody wants to work for an ET. You don't even want to sit on a bus with an ET. So,
No, it's true. I like that. EG. Nice.
I stole it from somebody else.
All right, cool.
But so let's talk a little bit. We you made a great point as a great kind of liaison into this, which is, in a nutshell, how many couches in the world could you go crash on tomorrow if you needed to? You got 10, 15 countries worth of friends. They'd consider you family, I know, and in a lot of ways you would reciprocate. The game's done that for you. The game's done that for me. And that handful of people that are sort of in that sorority fraternity of people that get that, right? Let's talk real quick about it. You got to get it.
Right, because you can travel all over the world. If you don't have an perspective and open mind, you won't gain anything at all. You got to get it. So I like that. Yeah, you got to get it.
Got to get it. And that made it tough for me, to be honest. In a professional space, I'm navigating parts of the world, a lot of places that I hadn't really seen or worked with an American. Mm-hmm. But I get in some places that had, and their experience wasn't very good.
Not good. Yeah.
So then it's like, oh man, now I got to dispel all these other,
Right.
So
that one cool American to change their whole entire minds. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, that's what it is. And so, let's talk real quick about our friends with the Bureau in Educational and Cultural Affairs, our friends at the State Department's Sports Diplomacy Division. I think it's incredible to me now, with as much time as I've spent with them directly, indirectly, floating around U.S. embassies all over the world, trying to connect them with sports organizations and ministries of sport and municipalities and all these things. But it's still incredible to me how many people here in the domestic U.S. didn't even know we had a sports diplomacy division.
Right. Don't even know what sports diplomat is, right?
Don't even know what that is, or what is soft diplomacy? What are they doing with why is basketball such an important thing? So let's chat a little, because you've done a lot of work. You've served as an envoy. You've been sent for very purposeful and deliberate reasons to get out, and you've seen the incredible impact that it has. But you've also seen maybe some of the shortcomings of our current, system and the way to go. And but let's talk a little bit about the ECA's Sports Diplomacy Division and some of their programs.
Okay, so like you said, the Sports Diplomacy Program, so it's changed my life. Who knew that you can use sports, international relations, and business as the intersectionality would be so dynamic in that way, and it's definitely allowed me to see things in different perspectives in terms of business and international relations, foreign policy. But the programs there are amazing. So essentially what we do as an envoy, you are sent over to different countries, working with those U.S. embassies, creating programming that serves underserved kids. In my case, I've been sent to a lot of countries to kind of bring this whole women empowerment movement in countries where women don't necessarily have that strong of a voice. But the work you do there is amazing. It goes beyond sports, and it touches international relations and how you can change societies through sports. I'll give you an example. Last November, I was in Tanzania. Listen, Chris, that changed my life. Who knew? There's small things that sports can do, but you don't know, the impact of sports, you have no idea until you're just right there. So I'm working with this this group of Maasai girls at this public school in this really small village, in this really small tribe. And I'm sent there because, and I went with Jim Clemens. You know who Jim Clemens is?
I mean, I know who he is, but I don't know Jim personally.
Jim Clemens, Beast, Michael Jordan's coach, Kobe Bryant's coach, Shaq's coach. So we're there because these girls are accepted into the school, and because they're accepted into the school, they are not subject to underage marriage. Underage marriage, Chris. These girls in their tribes and their culture, they're being pretty much sold off into marriage at 12. And because they come to the school, because they're here with us, because they're getting this training, combination of sports and education allows them that liberation, allows them that ability to not be subjected to underage marriage. So we got international relations, we got business, and we have sports. And then there's that passion and that love. And you're asking me to be a part of that? Yeah. That blew my mind, because these girls were just, there's nothing like an international kid. I mean, I love American kids too, but their appreciation for the simple things, a smile, a good job, changes their whole entire lives. And you'll hear from them 10 years later, hey, coach, remember you? Yeah, it was the best experience of my life. And I think it also has to tie into the fact that my parents are Nigerian, so I'm Nigerian American, first generation born here, and being able to give back to my bloodline in Africa in that way was dynamic. So basically what I had the opportunity to do was create a curriculum for basketball, host camps and clinics, speak to coaches, coach coaches, talk to administrators, and help with the shift that this school is trying to make in terms of pretty much getting rid of the whole concept of underage marriage. Now, the government has in place that it's illegal, but it's not really exercised, and it's still practiced. So just being able to be in that area with those kids, it has changed my life. So
no, that's incredible. It's and I love your passion. It just exudes when you tell these stories about, but think about that. I mean, what a profound significance in terms of a footprint and you left it through basketball. You know what I mean? Like, it's, again, it is, obviously it's just a basketball podcast, and it's a basketball show and episode, but we're not talking about, just basketball. We're talking about what an incredible tool it is,
right,
how it can equip someone like you to go in. And so every single one of those young women whose lives you affected every single person that they come into
I hope so.
contact with for the rest of their lives. So it starts to spread that way. And so when they raise their children someday, and when they get involved, and when they see things that are worthy of their time, their sweat equity, those are the things that they're going to propel. And that's what I love about, I give our government plenty of criticism, like everybody else. We're all good at that. You guys don't do this well, that well. But they do have some, foreign policy goals that are almost otherwise unattainable. They can't send a regular diplomat. They can't send U.S. federal government personnel, foreign service officer, military, and have the same effect that they can as they send Chinny Nwagbo. They can send you in there, and you can get stuff done because you can engage. You can become human, and you can really attain to those elements. And that's what soft diplomacy is. That's what sports diplomacy is, and that's what connected you and I is. People like Laura Dixon for the Spurs that see value in people that see value in that. And, Laura's been a part of the Global Sports Mentoring Program, and she's mentored a number of young women professionals that are in their spaces doing incredible things. But to me, there's not, you'd have a hard time, kind of articulating to me that there's something more significant that we could be doing with this game than things like that, than what you did.
I agree. And I want to touch on what you said, and you said something about your podcast, but I think what's so important, and I don't want to harp on it too much, but it's the sustainability. You may be a little podcast, but the little that you do, because of that sustainability, has a huge effect on the world. People hearing this is going to change their lives. People being a part of the show and being able to relate and say, okay, all right, there's purpose there. It's going to change their lives. So I think going there and doing the work that we've done, because we've done it together, is seeing how that impact can change lives, and then thinking about it in terms of sustainability, right? How can we continue to make the footprint move in the forward direction? And so I'm so thankful for things like this podcast, things like sports diplomacy, ECA. I mean, it's a dynamic thing, and I hope that we can continue to move the conversation in a way where you send the right people. So I'm like piecing in all the things that you said, and because I say that because you can send a Chris Dial there, you can send a Chinny there, and you can send a X there. If X goes there and is an ET, an energy energy taker, there's no impact that's going to be made, right?
No.
X just wants to take the trip and do X, Y, and Z. But if X is an EG and he brings the energy and he brings the passion and he brings the message, that's what's most important. And so I'm so thankful for this, these types of experiences like this podcast and ECA and being a professional athlete, because I know what the value is. And I want to be able to get out and say that to people. There's great value in this. You just make it make sense for you, and then make it make sense for others. So,
well, they only have to spend a few minutes with you, and they're going to figure that out. So you're an incredible change.
You're going to think I'm crazy.
No, you got it. You are crazy in the best way. You're crazy in the best way. I mean, but that's what it is, and I think that's what even our friends at State, who do an incredible job. They have, in a lot of ways, kind of a thankless job. They're always at the whim of whatever political climate. Money's coming in, money's not coming in. We can spend it, we can't. Now they're in the middle of a pandemic. Some of their primary partners, our friends at FHI 360, they're trying to figure out how do we program reciprocal sports exchanges when you can't travel. And they're doing an amazing job. They got you making virtual videos.
No, right. I actually had a kid. Oh my God. So the glory in all of this is the response. So, I checked my Instagram the other day, and one of my kids from, I want to say, Albania, because I was in Albania last year too. She wrote me, she's like, "Hey coach, I had a great time on the session." And I'm like, "Oh, you've seen the session already?" And she's like, "I didn't even know you were a part of, that."
Yeah.
That kind of, I know.
Isn't it cool? No, it's so cool.
But,
it's so awesome.
Yeah.
But that's the footprint and that accessibility, Chinny. That's one thing that hasn't always been there. The United States, they'd send a celeb, basically like some awesome player, incredible talent. But like you said, they get there, they do a good job, and they'd get out, and the kids and the coaches in that community had no accessibility. And that's what makes you great. And that's what I've always tried to do is remain accessible, to these people and make sure that they can reach out, that I can help them perpetually, beyond that little program. So, but that's great. At least I think now people that are listening will understand a little bit more about what those programs do and what they are. So
we're thankful for them. Yeah.
So this has been incredible. You're just one of those people that I could talk to all day, honestly.
Yes, Chris, I appreciate it.
I'm gonna make this sort of official, but I'm gonna say that we absolutely have to do something together. Formally and soon. And, that's like the call to action in this podcast is that Chinny and the Basketball Embassy are going to go out and we're going to find, some subset of some society, and we're going to impact it through the game. And I want to support you and put you out there to as many people as I can, because you're just an incredible soul, such a good heart.
Thank you.
And I think also, kind of as we wrap up, and I want to put it back to you if there's anything you want to leave us with or anything else that you want to talk to. But I think also people have gotten a pretty decent gauge if they didn't know you, if you were an unknown quantity to them prior to this. I think they got a pretty good gauge of who you are and what you stand for and kind of, your set of experiences and what's brought you to this point, in your life and in your career. And, maybe, people, I'd also like people to understand out there, because I try to mentor, I try to talk to as many folks as I can in the best light that I can. But doing what you love is like probably the best advice I could give anybody. Like, figure out what you love and do that. And if you can feed yourself and move about, your time, because you're truly doing what you love, and it's just so nice to see,
I appreciate it. Doing what I love, it also falls in line with my purpose and using my purpose to serve others. I think if you do what you love and it falls in line with your purpose and it serves others, there will always be a need for that, right? So you'll always be taken care of in that way. So I'm so very thankful to United We Hoop for this brilliant. I think this is like, it's getting all this good energy. But I think for kids, the most important thing is just to stick to what you know and listen to yourself and be your own fan and your own advocate and find your way, because your life is something meaningful and you're going to do amazing and great things. And if you just stick with it and believe in yourself, it'll happen for you. Have a little passion, a little craziness with it too. I believe in God. So you mix God in there, there's no way you won't be successful and amazing in your own way. So yeah.
That's awesome, Chinny. Thanks so much. Thanks for being you. Thanks for everything that you're doing. And I'm gonna be bugging you about whatever this venture is gonna be, whatever endeavor we're gonna dive into.
Absolutely.
And of course, we'd love to have you back on. At some point, maybe we could have you down in person one of these days when we're allowed to do stuff and it's safe. Yeah. And Texas has got to act a little bit better for us to be able to do that. So
yeah, I'm sorry you guys are suffering down there. I saw that the numbers are going up. So
we're gonna get better at it. We're slow learners sometimes. There's a little bit of deliberate stubbornness down here in the South, but we'll figure it out. But yeah, we'd love to have you down, and just definitely I look forward to keeping in touch. And we appreciate you, and thanks for being on today.
Thanks for listening to United We Hoop. You can find links to our guests and the Basketball Embassy in our show notes. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Basketball Embassy, and we're on Twitter at @BBallEmbassy. Embassy. Our host is Coach Chris Dial. Our executive producer is Mary Ullman Jaffet. The podcast is recorded at Game Day Media Studios in San Antonio, Texas, USA.